Good afternoon, everyone. This is the Office of Consumer Credit Commissioner's stakeholder meeting to discuss the rule review for credit access businesses. My name is Matt Nance, and I'm the OCCC's General Counsel. I'm joined by other members of the OCCC staff, including Commissioner Leslie Pettyjohn, Director of Licensing, Finance, and Human Resources, Moran Diamond, Director of Consumer Protection, Huffman Lewis, Assistant Director of Exam Operations, Carl Hubenthal, and Senior Paralegal, Ginger Harmon, who's acting as our meeting organizer. We're holding this meeting through an online webinar, and I want to thank everyone for joining us. Getting input from stakeholders is a really important part of our rulemaking process, and these meetings help us make sure that we produce the best rules possible. Our webinar platform is GoToWebinar, and some of you might be listening on your phone, some may be watching on computer, some may be doing both. For those watching on your computer, there's a questions window where you can submit comments to staff. And if you have technical questions about using the webinar, you can type them in and Ginger will try to answer those. We're discussing a pre-comment draft of rule amendments that's available on the OCCC's webpage for recent and upcoming rules. On that webpage, you can see the draft rules by clicking on the link for Credit Access Business Rule Review. If you have any comments on the rule amendments, you can go ahead and type those at any time, and I'll be getting to those in just a few minutes. If you're on a computer with a mic, there's also a function allowing you to raise your hand, and we can let you make a comment verbally. We're talking about rule amendments coming out of a process called rule review. The Texas Government Code requires state agencies to review their rules every 4 years to make sure they should still exist and to make any necessary updates. And when we do that, we try to get input from stakeholders on whether the rules should be updated. The rules governing credit access businesses in Title VII, Chapter 83, Subchapter B of the Texas Administrative Code are currently up for review. I understand there was a question from stakeholders about why we're doing the rule review slightly before the end of the 4-year period, just 3 years and 4 months after the last CAB rule review. This was really just a scheduling issue. We're planning to do some rule reviews slightly ahead of schedule to minimize overlap of different rule chapters, particularly the longer rule chapters governing our OCCC licensed industries. And this is where the CAB rules fell as a result of that rule review scheduling. So I'd like to first summarize these draft rule amendments and then lay out the proposed timeline for the rules, and then you'll have a chance to provide comments. So there are 4 different sections with proposed rule changes coming out of the rule review. First, in section 83.3002, we replaced the requirement to list a responsible person for each office with the requirement to list a compliance officer. The compliance officer would be a person who can be contacted on compliance issues at a company level. Second, in section 83.3007, we'd specify the process for the OCCC to notify a license applicant of the intent to deny a license application, and how to determine the 30-day period for the applicant to request a hearing. This is consistent with how the OCCC currently notifies applicants of an intent to deny and is meant to ensure consistency with section 393.607 of the Texas Finance Code. Third, in section 83.4003, we'd make a couple of corrections relating to review of criminal history to ensure consistency with some recent legislation. And fourth, in section 83.6007, we have updates to the 4 CAB cost disclosures to include updated information about the costs of other types of credit, as well as the stick figure disclosure about patterns of repayment in the bottom left portion of the cost disclosure. So that's the summary of the draft amendments, and here's a proposed timeline for the amendments. You can see that we're requesting informal pre-comments by this Friday, October 6th. We intend to propose the amendments at the Finance Commission's October 27th meeting. There would be an official comment period during the months of November and December. We'd present the rule for adoption at the Finance Commission's December meeting, and the rule would be effective in January of 2024. Typically, when we revise the CAB cost disclosures and rule review, we've allowed a delayed implementation period for CABs to start using the new forms. And our initial thinking here is to have a delayed implementation date in July 2024, which would allow CABs to start using the new forms at any time between the effective date in January and a delayed date in July 2024. although we'd encourage cabs to start using forms as soon as they are legally effective, if possible. If stakeholders have any comments on that period, we're happy to hear those comments. This is, of course, a tentative timeline, and all of this is subject to the Finance Commission's approval of the rules. So with that, I've summarized the rule action, and I will open things up to any comments on the rule amendments. Again, there are two ways to provide your feedback through this webinar. First, you can type your comment out and send it to us through the webinar's question feature, or if you're on a computer with a mic, there should be a function allowing you to raise your hand. If you have a longer written question, you can feel free to type a quick message into the question field and go to webinar explaining that you have a longer message, and we can wait for you to type out the longer message. So Ginger, do we have any written questions or comments through the webinar or any hands raised?
No, we don't have any questions or hands raised at this time.
Okay. Well, I will wait for a minute or so to give anyone a chance. Again, please feel free, if you would like to make a verbal comment, to raise your hand through the raise hand feature for this webinar, or if you have a written question, to type that in, or a longer written question, to type in something quick. Okay, we have a hand raised from Rob Norcross. Ginger, would you please allow Mr. Norcross to unmute? Oh, Mr. Norcross has put his hand back down. So Rob, feel free to type something in or re-raise your hand, but as right now, it looks like we have you without a hand raised. Okay, well, I will wait for 1 minute to see if anyone has a hand raise. Again, please feel free to type out a shorter question or a message that you have a longer question, or to raise a hand. We'll wait 1 minute starting now just to see if we have any. Okay, we have a question from Rob. How were the average fees calculated in the disclosures? Partly for several of those transactions, especially the ones the OCCC regulates, we do get some information based on annual reports from other industries, and some of that is summarized in our the report that we put together each December. I was Carl Hubenthal may be able to add information if I missed something on that. Carl, do you have anything to add on that issue?
Hey, Matt. This is Carl Hubenthal. So the fees are calculated the same way they've done on each subsequent rule review, which is for the transactions we regulate, other than cab loans. Typically, we look at a typical average loan amount for a comparable term, and then most of those transactions have a fee limit at the top end, and we use what the statutory limit would be on those fees to get the rate and the fee amount. And for the cab loans, we use an approach which is the kind of the quarterly reports and the annual reports to determine the typical loan amount. If it's an installment loan, we have to amortize that loan, but then we do come up with like a kind of a average of an installment and a single payment loan for both a payday and title loan.
Okay, and then Rob's second question was the auto title and payday was trying to link the amounts with the quarterly form. So I think Carl addressed that with the end of that point. So Rob, please feel free if that didn't address your question to type something back in. Okay, I will wait about 1 more minute to see if there's any more follow-up questions in response to that question.
Mr. Norcross, this is Ginger, the organizer. I understand that you were trying to raise your hand and it's not working. So if it's okay, Matt, can I just unmute Mr. Norcross so he can make his comments?
Sure.
Great, I'm going to go ahead and do that now.
Unmuted.
Okay. Hey, how's that?
Hi, Rob. We can hear you.
Hey, man. Okay, good, good. Okay, a couple of clarification questions because I've gathered questions from members that have looked at this and asked me, and I didn't have the answers, so I'm going to ask you guys. So there's 4 different disclosures for the 4 different kinds of loans. But for the comparison purposes, when you've got that cost of other types of loans, and I'm not disagreeing with this. I'm just trying to get my head around this. The auto title loan is $19.45 for all 4 types of loans, and the payday loan is $34.14 for all 4 types of loans. I think that's the way we've always done it in the past, but one of the folks asked if since there are typically different costs for the 4 different kinds of loans, would we do that in there, or since this is just for comparison purposes, we've just got 1 auto title cost and 1 payday cost? Does that make sense? I'm not sure the question makes sense.
Well, Rob, if I'm understanding you correctly, the question is, should, on this cost comparison, should that list have 4 different entries for payday and title loans? 1 for single payment payday, 1 for installment payday. Oh, okay.
No,
did I misunderstand?
My question was on the first one, which is single payday loan, 1 payment. Should you have the 1 payment cost of an auto title loan and the 1 payment cost of a payday? Well, I guess. And then on the second page where it's multi-payment, should you have the multi-payment cost? You know what I mean? And I think this is the way we've always done it. And I'm just trying to get an answer for one of the companies. So if this is the way we've always done it, that's fine. We'll leave it the way it is, because you don't want to confuse everybody. And then my follow-up question would be, I looked at all the quarterly reports from last year and the annual report from last year, and I couldn't find I mean, the figures are high, but I couldn't find anything over $26 for the average cost of a payday loan, and we've got $34.14. And I was just wondering where Is it because there's 2 payments every month? I mean, where did that number come from? Because I couldn't find it in any of the reports.
Okay, so Rob, your first question was, is it the way we've always done it to have the same disclosure for the 4 forms for the auto title and payday for average APR and average fees and interest per $100 borrowed over 1 month? And the answer is yes, that's the way we've done it previously. Those have been consistent cost of other types of loans for the 4 disclosures. And yeah, I think the issue is trying to have some consistency and also keeping in mind the real estate of this disclosure, trying not to have it be get it to fit on 1 page and not, have really small type and be too packed with information that someone can't really see it. But as Carl was mentioning, we do try to, develop something that is using data from both single and multi, and we can talk and get together and see if we can provide additional information. And yeah, we can, I can get with Carl and see if we can, develop some additional information.
I know it's hard. I agree that it's hard to come up with, because you've got different kinds of loans with different terms and that sort of thing. And you've got to pick a point somewhere where you think it's representative of an average loan. And I get that. And I think this is the way we've always done it, and that's okay. My question was, I think, and I could be wrong on this. I could be looking at the reports wrong, but I think a single payment payday is usually more expensive than a multiple payment payday. Let's put auto title to the side for a second. And I just couldn't find if you're going to combine the two, I would think that your number would be somewhere less than the single payment payday and somewhere greater than the multiple payment payday. And I couldn't find a quarterly report that listed a single payment average that was more than $26. And I just didn't know how you got to 34. That's and if it's because the multiple payment ones are really more expensive and I'm not reading the form right, well, that's fine. I mean, wouldn't be the first time I didn't read the form right. But anyway, and I'm not interested in you publishing how you guys calculate all this. I was just I'm just going to be blunt. I was wondering why that number was so high. And that's it. That's all I got.
Okay. Well, we will, if you, again, please feel free to include any suggested changes in a pre-comment. We will take a look and see if we can kind of develop some more information on that one.
Yeah, and maybe what I'll do, yeah, okay, that's fine.
Huffman Lewis is saying he can provide a quick response. So Huff, could you provide some additional input on this issue?
I'm sorry, this is Carl Hubenthal. Actually, my computer decided to restart in the middle of the webinar, so I moved into Huffman's office. But I think one of the points of confusion we might be looking at is I don't have the form in front of me now that I'm on a different computer, but the disclosure is representative for basically a 1 month repayment or like a 30-day repayment, while the average cap fees for like a single payment loan are for a shorter term. So you have to stretch that out to make it a 30 day. So it's going to be higher than what's reported on the form. So if the average term of, say, a single payment payday loan is 19 days, which is about average, then you have to stretch that out and stretch the fee out to make it equivalent to a 30-day repayment.
Okay, well, that makes sense. I appreciate it. I will pass that along. That's yeah, that makes sense. Okay, thanks.
Okay, thanks, Rob. Thanks, Carl. Any other questions from participants?
No, there's no questions or hand raises at this time.
Okay. All right, well, I will start wrapping up, but again, please feel free to raise a hand or type a quick message in if we have any other feedback or comments. Okay. So I want to thank everyone for joining us and participating. Again, rule updates are available on our website on the webpage for recent and upcoming rules. And we will also be posting the audio of this meeting. We're accepting written pre-comments on these rules until 5 p.m. this Friday, October 6th. Please email those to me at rule.comments@occc.texas.gov, which is our email address for rule comments. Thank you all for attending. Please be safe out there, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.